Hey everyone, it's time to buckle up if you haven't already for this crazy cuckoo ride called 2024, the world as we know it. And as a continuation of discussing the global monetary system, I think we need to address some very serious things coming so that you have a better understanding and can hopefully prepare for it. Now, keep in mind, this is only my opinion, and as always, do your own due diligence and come to your own conclusions. So first things first, we need to talk about BRICS and Russia. Now, for those of you who have not been paying attention, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And collectively, they have agreed to form a united currency backed by gold, and thus abandoning the petrodollar that has sustained the US dollar for the last 50 years. Now, look, I'm not going to do a deep dive into what I know about how the US dollar was taken off the gold standard by President Nixon. And, well, maybe more importantly, his advisor, Henry Kissinger, one of the most infamous globalists of the 20th century. But we need to at least understand this act by Nixon in 1971 was the catalyst that started the increase of the national debt. And maybe some of you might even be scratching your head. Well, why does the United States even have a national debt, and to whom? Well, again, without going into a huge history lesson, in December of 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed, thus creating the Federal Reserve, which loans money to the US government. And while its initial intent, well, it was to regulate and stabilize the nation's banking system. Well, it truly was a deal with the devil, as the Federal Reserve is not federal at all, but look, it's rather publicly and privately owned by some of the wealthiest families in the world. And as the famous quote goes, he who has the gold makes the rules. But let's move on. Why does this matter? Why does this all matter to BRICS? Well, look, historically speaking, because the US dollar isn't tied to gold, their solution to budget deficits, well, it's been to just print more money. So in turn, this is why that 50-cent loaf of bread is now $5. It's not like the bread actually costs more to make, but rather the dollar yesterday is worth less today. So it takes more dollars to buy the same item. And nations around the world have been a slave to the US dollar for decades. Well, that is all about to shift. This October, during their annual summit, word on the street is Russia and friends will be announcing their new currency backed by gold, thus abandoning the US dollar. And it's not just those 5 nations. Several other nations are also jumping on board. And this is all just before what, well, it's likely going to be one of the most contentious elections in US history. Now, before I go any further, I think we need to understand from a prophetic point of view what is being set up here. To do this, let's look at Revelation 6, verse 5 and 6. When the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wage, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wage, and do not damage the oil and the wine. This speaks of massive inflation, much worse than what you're experiencing right now. But just how quickly could this become reality? The answer is very quickly. And of course, it's a bit confusing when you see headlines like this one in Yahoo News telling its readers inflation is slowing down. But honestly, folks, I don't see it. And what's more likely is this is just propaganda or an exaggeration. The reality is, all you need to do is look at the gold price, which has historically been an indicator of the strength of the dollar. Well, gold is hitting new all-time highs. And it's not that gold is worth more, but rather the dollar is worth less. And so it's taking more dollars to purchase the same amount of gold, just like the bread. Now, here's where things get very concerning. If BRICS nations' plan really takes hold, as it seems to be doing, the United States has a real issue on their hand. Because if the dollar is abandoned, that $5 loaf of bread just might be $10 by the end of the year. Gas prices, while in my opinion are terribly high already, around $4 on average, look, they could be $8 a gallon or more. And if you don't think this could happen, look, all you have to do is look at Venezuela and how they've been plagued with extreme hyperinflation. Why did this happen? Well, because they kept printing money. And here's the truth of it. If any of us were to print money, well, that's called counterfeiting. But the government does it, and they get a pat on the back for keeping the United States going. Never mind that $35 trillion debt that it's never going to get paid. You see, the real issue here is the historically massive money grab that all politicians are taking right now. If you just look at the people supporting this Palestine-Israel war, politicians are not voting for we the people. They vote for people donating money. Based on this one article alone, it's no wonder congressional leaders are voting to send billions of dollars to Israel, because in turn, it equates to, for some individuals, millions of dollars for those voting. And that's just in Israel. When you take a look at the eye-watering $60 billion aid package sent to Ukraine, it gets even worse. A vast majority of that money is actually going towards American-made weaponry. And while job creation is most times a good thing, I just can't get behind this when the American people have to suffer through massive inflation as a consequence. But the real reason why taxpayer money is being readily given away is to artificially support the US dollar, kicking the can further down the road, possibly until there's no more. You see, I don't doubt that BRICS is a concern to the Western nations. But in the meantime, those that can, they're buying up as many hard assets as possible. You see, for the last few years, central banks and countries, for that matter, have been stockpiling mass quantities of gold. And while gold is that safe haven for cash, what if what's happening is more of an indicator of what is just a few steps away? After all, gold and silver traders have been warning for years that the real value of these precious metals would be revealed one day, where gold will reach upwards of $10,000 an ounce. I know right now, while gold is at $2,400 US per ounce at the time of this recording, they are saying by the end of the year, it will be $3,200. But my question is, are they accounting for this announcement of BRICS in October? Look, I don't know, but I am believing if the US dollar slips into hyperinflation, $3,200 an ounce will look like the Bitcoin that, well, I didn't buy at $2,000. And that's true. So how do you prepare for all what seems to be coming? Well, first and foremost, have yourself aligned with Christ. I'm reminded of Psalms 91:7 that says, "Though 1,000 fall at your side, though 10,000 are dying around you, these evils will not touch you." And I cannot say that we will not see some things happening, but so many stories in the Bible tell of times when God got people through a period, even when everything looked terrible. But from a practical sense, and even a biblical sense, I'll challenge you asking, what do you want versus what do you actually need? If you watch me for a while, you've seen me talk about where I do and don't spend money. And well, maybe a good example of this is my iPhone 6S. But look, if we're going back to the passage in Revelation where it's a day's wage for basically a loaf of bread, I doubt things like the newest car or the computer or the iPhone is going to matter when, look, you're just struggling to eat. And I don't think we need to think hard to remember what the grocery stores looked like during COVID. So perhaps having a supply of dry goods like rice and pasta and legumes of some kind is a good idea. Another thing to consider is debt. If you can, you should probably lower or eliminate your debt, especially your high interest credit cards. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender," the slave. And I get it. Some people here possibly have investment properties where maybe renters are paying your mortgage. But look, I'm quickly reminded of the crisis in 2008. That got really going when people who never should have been given loans bought rental properties and investment properties. And so when there was that little hiccup, that little glitch, and people couldn't pay their rent, then people couldn't pay their mortgage. And then it became this one massive spiraling down of defaults on loans. And to be honest, we are starting to see many similarities to 2008. You don't have to look hard to see uncertainty in the banking system. Now, I doubt should there be any crash, it's not going to happen all at once. And people, well, you're likely to feel it in varying degrees as it's been in the past. But all I'm saying is pay attention and be wise. Maybe you think gold or silver is the answer, thinking we will eventually be on a bartering system. Well, I am buying a little of this for myself. Look, I look at it more as a way to park money against inflation. Honestly, I doubt we will be chopping down or cutting down silver and gold bars to buy and sell things. But all this talk about money and being prepared reminds me of what Jesus said. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Be wise and be prepared, because Jesus did say, you will have trouble. Not that you might have trouble, but you will. And some worse than others. But Jesus also said, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Faith can be a funny thing because, look, it's trusting in the unseen. But I know for myself, the more I embrace Scripture, the more I don't worry about the things going wrong around me. And that's my word of the day. Look, I really hope that this encourages you. Every day I keep seeing the most unbelievable things, and look, I just roll my eyes and I shake my head. I want to say that the rapture of the church is around the corner, but I've also been challenged plenty of times, in fact, even right here in the comments. What if it's not? And it's a fair point. We don't know the day or the hour. So let's just all be wise and prepared, and maybe more importantly, keep our spirits full of oil for that day that Jesus does come. Look, thank you all for tuning in, and give that like button a click, maybe more, so more people will watch this. And look, I hope to see you all next time.